Everyone, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening, viewers. Welcome to another exciting, entertaining, and informative edition of the Evening Review Show. I'm Matthias Aufiku, news editor of the Namibian Sun newspaper. Before we get into the business of the night, let's take a look at tomorrow's headlines. Well, first up, youth employment. Of course, a monster over the years in the country, with almost half of the country's youth facing into the eyes of unemployment. There is a feeling that government is not doing enough to address this matter. This is, of course, the views of the Popular Democratic Movement MP Ina Hengari. Of course, wildlife affairs in tomorrow's paper also. Namibian cheetahs to be reintroduced in India. Of course, we do know that almost a century ago, cheetahs were extinct in that part of the world. So some of Namibia's cheetahs will be relocated to India. Also, in tomorrow's edition, the government budgets 18 million for a statue and a museum for Hosea Kutako, Chief Hosea Kutako. Well, if you want to read more about this budget allocation, make sure to grab a copy of tomorrow's Namibian Sun newspaper. Well, as promised, it's another exciting edition. I'm joined in studio by Ms. Anastasiiya Shemeret. She's a Ukrainian citizen living in Namibia. That's correct?
Yeah, that's true, Matthias.
Yeah? Welcome.
Thank you very much for having me.
Good. How long have you been in Namibia?
I came to Namibia in January, but it's not my first time here. I enjoy it so much that I came more and more.
Yeah. Okay. Of course, you come from Ukraine, and Ukraine have been making global headlines the past few days. Of course, the standoff with Russia being the mainstay of why Ukraine is making headlines. Well, can you maybe give us a brief synopsis as to what's happening back home? When you speak to your family, I'm sure you speak to them every day. What are they telling you? What's happening on the ground?
Yes, it's been exactly a week since the war started. Last Thursday, my friends, my family woke up at 5 a.m. because of the missiles, bombs, and rockets flying at our homes, because Russia started full-scale invasion of Ukraine, and it wants to make Ukraine become part of Russia and make the new USSR, and that's why Ukrainians are fighting hard to protect our home, to protect our houses, and stay independent and free as we were like already for 30 years.
Yeah. But maybe if we just have to go back, the 2014 Crimea annexion, so before that, how was the situation between the two countries?
Between the two countries, as it was claimed that we were brothers, two nations very close to each other, very similar. But then it all started happening with the annexion of Crimea, war on the east of Ukraine, that Russia wanted to expand its territory, the same as happened with Moldova, Pridnestrovia, with Georgia, and other parts that we all know, because Russia wants to expand so much, and it wants, like, as I said, to make a new Soviet Union, and that's why it annexed Crimea. That's why we had for 8 years war on the east of Ukraine, and now we decided to take the whole territory, and that's why we will not let it happen, because we are sovereign territory, we are free, and we don't need brothers like that anymore.
Yeah, maybe you could just tell me about the safety aspect back home, as to the way you left life and compared to now. What are you hearing?
Currently, my friends in big cities, in Kiev, in Kharkiv, they are all hiding in bunkers because Russia shoots civilian objects. Russia shoots kindergartens, Russia shoots hospitals and ambulances, just blocks of flats receive missiles, and it's not safe to be outside. It's not even safe anymore to be at your home. That's why everyone is hiding in the bunkers, those who can, and others try to go to other regions, like which are more safe, like west of Ukraine, or to flee to Europe to receive shelter there.
Yeah. Of course, you are part of a movement that has been planning to have a march, or call it a demonstration tomorrow, to the Russian embassy in Windhoek. How is that going?
Yes. So tomorrow, me and my fellow Ukrainians, we organized a peaceful demonstration to denounce the war, to raise awareness amongst local people. And it was supposed to be in front of the Russian embassy to talk to them, of course, but they put some restrictions on us yesterday. I guess they got scared of hearing the truth, and that's why police asked us to go and choose another location. That's why we decided to meet, gather tomorrow at Zoo Park at 11 a.m. and march through Independence Museum on the Robert Mugabe Ave, then go back to Independence Avenue and end at Zoo Park to march through the most populated and crowded streets to attract attention.
Okay. You mentioned that you were informed by the police that you can't have your march as planned. What were the reasons that they gave?
They say that because of the tension between our countries, Russia and Ukraine, they are scared for the safety of Russian embassy, because they're scared that peaceful protests can become not peaceful anymore, even though I guaranteed for sure that it's going to be peaceful, no one will carry a weapon, but they still are afraid. But I guess mostly they don't want to hear the truth and want to still keep lying and not admitting the war. Yeah,
but did you approach the police before that? Beforehand?
Yes, of course we read Namibian law. Of course that was first and foremost, and we approached the police 3 days before the demonstration, as it was planned to receive approval, of course, and only then start inviting people and attracting media to cover this event.
Was that approval granted?
Yes. We have an approval from the police.
Okay. Yeah, I think that the other issue I'd like to touch on is really the impact. What would you say were the aims and objectives of this demonstration that has now been called off as far as the original destination is concerned, which was the Russian embassy?
Yeah, first goal that we all have in mind is to raise awareness, to make Namibians talk about this, learn the truth, learn it from us, see the images, see the proofs, and stand together for the peace. Second aim was to ask Namibian government not to abstain during next UN Assembly votes against war in Ukraine, but to have a strong position and be against the war and vote accordingly. And third aim, that's why we wanted to be in front of the Russian embassy, to ask Russian embassy to take the militaries out of Ukraine, to ask the Russian government to take all the militaries out of Ukraine and leave us in peace. That's why it was planned to be there, but now we will keep with our first two goals as planned.
Yeah. So do you see this change of plans, would it in any way hamper your objectives for this demonstration?
No, we will not give up in any way, and we will still talk to the Namibian government, and still as our first target, our first aim are Namibians, because we want them to know the truth. We want them to stand for peace, because we understand if a person knows what's happening, then the person can act accordingly, support, donate money to the Ukrainian army, help in other ways, share posts, and be informed, because information is the new currency of 21st century. That's why it's very important right now. Yeah.
Well, of course, you mentioned that you also wanted the Namibian government to also step in there and move away from abstaining from some of these UN votes. I'm sure you are aware of the two of the Ukrainian-related votes at the UN this week that Namibia abstained from those ones. And what did you make of that?
Yeah, we all heard of Namibia abstaining from voting against the war. And I think that we should not be silent on that, because silence means approval. You approve of war, you approve of the crimes that are happening. And we all know, we learned history, how Namibia was also once a colony of South Africa, and how Namibians never settled down, how they were fighting for peace, they were fighting for freedom and independence, and actually they managed to achieve it, and that's why we're in a free, sovereign country right now. So I understood that it's freedom of speech, freedom of rights, and freedom, independence is very important important for Namibians, for Namibian government, and that's what we expect from them right now, to vote for our independence and to support us in this matter. We want them to be consistent and to support us against Russia.
Yeah. Well, would you say smaller countries in the global political scene perhaps find it difficult to vote, whether it's now for or against certain situations which they think could jeopardize their bilateral relations with those involved as for instance, the standoff now between Russia and Ukraine?
I understand the fear and I understand totally the diplomacy, how it's being done. But now it's not a time to abstain or to ignore the issue. And that's why we call to every country to vote against, to stand and speak up, because it's not anymore war in Ukraine. It's not anymore war only in Europe. It's the war that is happening everywhere in the world. And since crimes happening against humanity, against our freedom and independence, what are the guarantees that it will not happen further in Europe, further in the world? So if we don't say stop now, it's going to be too late.
Yeah. Anastasiiya, we'll go for a short break and we'll be back. I want us to talk about Russia's claims around NATO and why Russia thinks the NATO element is perhaps a cause for what's happening now in Ukraine. Just gather your thoughts around that. Well, let me welcome our viewers back from the short break. Anastasiiya, let's continue our conversation. As much as there are talks and everyone, perhaps, or most of the countries bashing Russia for what it's doing to Ukraine and so on, it seems Russia also has its position on this matter, especially around the NATO issues that, well, they feel that the expansion of other countries, especially the issue of NATO towards the Russian territories, is just too close for comfort. Well, what do you make of that? Is it a fair analysis from their side, or do you think it's just one of those political talks?
Exactly. I guess it's a great excuse for Putin to put his militaries in my country. That's what was claimed all the time, that Ukraine wants to join the European Union, Ukraine wants to join NATO, and since Putin wants to expand his empire and he wants to be a new emperor, he feels existential threat to his dictatorship, and that's why he feels that Ukraine will thrive economically, politically, culturally, and he does not want to make this happen. That's why he found an excuse that NATO is going to be too close to the borders, which of course he has the right to think about that, but he has no right to invade any other country. So it's just a great excuse that they tell to their citizen, but no one believes him in the world anymore.
Yeah. So when you say that there is a fear that Ukraine will become, well, self-sustainable in terms of what is political and economics and so on, are you then saying that at the moment Ukraine is somehow dependent on Russia for its survival?
We were dependent more or less before 2014, before annexion of Crimea. After that, many reforms and many laws were changed to cut off the oil, gas, and all the collaboration, to stop receiving the products, the food, and everything that we were importing from Russia. So now we are not dependent on them anymore because of the choices that we made 8 years ago. But Europe, unfortunately, is still a little bit dependent, especially on oil and gas. That's why the decision to cut off SWIFT was happening not so fast as we wanted. But still, we need to make decisions and fast, not to be dependent on this country, because Russia is going into the total isolation very fast.
Would you say the sanctions imposed on Russia are yielding any effect?
They are having effects, of course, not on the politicians mostly, even though some sanctions were imposed on them for visas to Europe, for flying, for traveling there. Even the oligarch who has a football club in England is now selling the football club because he will not be allowed to enter England anymore. And of course, mostly the people of Russia are suffering because now they will not be able to buy foreign products, they will not be able to use their credit cards, they will not be able to use Apple Pay, Google Pay, they will not watch any more international movies, they will not be able to travel anywhere. So it's total ban, total isolation, and it's very sad because they will pay for this war, and poor neighborhoods, poor cities will become even poorer, which is a tragedy for them, but they made their choice.
Yeah. Well, what would you say the current standoff between the two countries? What is the lesson, and not just for Ukrainians, I believe, or for Russians, and for, I think, everyone across the globe, as far as citizen involvement in government affairs is concerned?
Can you please repeat the question?
What would you say are the lessons that can be drawn by citizens all over the world as far as citizen involvement in their government affairs is concerned?
Yes, we have a huge lesson to learn from this war happening, especially what we saw in Russia, because Putin is already the president for 20 years. And some people try to demonstrate, to go and protest against this because they stopped having freedom of speech, any other rights that they initially had. And more and more with every year, no one could hear Russians anymore. That's how the dictatorship started to rule the country. It started affecting nearby countries, their allies. And if people would speak up, if they would not agree with the current politics, I guess that this would not have happened. That's exactly what happened with Ukraine in 2013. Our former president, all Ukraine wanted to go to the European Union to join it. Our president did not want, he wanted to join Russia, and everyone marched to the central square of our capital, and people were beaten. We had even snipers that were shooting in our own people, but no one gave up. And after this bloody winter, we still managed to change the president and change the direction and change it to the European Union. So I guess that's the huge lesson to give to civil society, not to be silent, to stand up, speak up, and make politicians be your servants and not be your dictators.
Yeah. Of course, the issue of information, you mentioned earlier on that information is the new currency. That's always, I believe, the first weapon that's used by those in power in terms of silencing the dissenting voices and views. How has it been in Ukraine, especially now with the current standoff? How's the information flow currently?
Currently, we have a huge informational campaign to tell the truth to Ukrainians, to Russians, of course, and to the world, because it's quite scary what's happening in Russia. They're being blocked from independent journals, independent newspapers, magazines. They don't know the truth. They still think that it's a military operation that is happening and that they shoot only military objects, which is completely fake. They create many fakes. They even want to make a deep fake of our president saying that we capitulate, to make a target advertisement and that every Russian can see it. So that's why Ukrainians are trying hard to make informational campaign, to make volunteers, create posters, create videos, and to make everyone see the truth. That's why we are trying hard to make the right information go around the globe.
Okay, but would you say that your country is getting enough support from countries around the world?
We cannot complain, that's for sure. We appreciate every person's support and countries that support us. And we have never seen the European Union united as right now and consolidated in their decisions. But I guess that's still not enough to stop Russia. That's why we all ask NATO to shelter our sky. That's why we all ask Europe, United States to stop buying gas, oil, to stop buying anything from Russia, to make it stop. So we need to impose more economical sanction. We need to shelter our sky, and that's what we still request from international community. So of course we appreciate the support being given right now, but we all need more.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to know from you, should Russia get its way in the current standoff, what do you think the future would hold for Ukraine?
Of course, I really believe that first we're gonna win this war. And second, we're gonna rebuild our country that is right now, some parts are in ashes already. We're gonna rebuild our country, make it even more beautiful, make it even more stronger. I guess we're gonna invest even more in our army for the future causes. And we already signed an application to join the European Union, and soon we will become, they will give us the candidate of the European Union, so I guess soon we will join. And I guess we will really focus on everything Ukrainian, like to make it thrive, to make it go global. And of course, we will unite more with Europe and the United States. And we'll see how it goes in the next years.
Yeah. Okay. And just as we wrap up, back to the demonstration or the march tomorrow, how do you anticipate the turnout to be?
Well, we expect at least 50 people to come to our protest. That's people who we invited, but of course more people are going to be joining, friends of friends, our communities. So I guess it's going to be great because we already prepared some slogans, we already prepared the posters. Everyone is ready to help, support. Everyone is very positive about the outcome, about Namibian government actually hearing us and listening to our requests. So tomorrow, 4th of March at 11 a.m. we hope to see every supporter of Ukraine at Zoo Park to march with us together for peace.
Yeah. Anastasiiya, thank you very much for your time today, and all the best for tomorrow.
Thank you very much, Matthias.
Thank you very much. Well, that's it to our viewers. Please tune in same time tomorrow for another exciting edition of the Evening Review Show. Thank you.